my dance, make it hurt.
What's up, Relentless Traders? Your host, Surreal.
And Juan, and welcome to episode 20. This week we're gonna discuss a little bit about just kind of our what we call relevant variables, like to each other. Because we spoke about it this week a little bit amongst each other, and it's whatever is relevant to how your style of trading is and your own time frame. And just because you spot something and your technical analysis to you says something, and it might say something different to somebody else. For example, even like on Twitter or wherever you get your trade ideas from, just because somebody's I would think bullish or bearish on a certain ticker, and you had your own technical analysis, right? And you went in and you saw that. Your time frame might be different. The way you trade might be different. What you see might be different. Even if you both are right, which you both can be right, right? If my time frame is the 5:15 and your time frame is the daily or weekly, we could both certainly be right. But these variables are something that have to be taken into account for every individual trader.
hmm And identify like what's most important to you, and we're going to discuss that in a little bit too, and kind of compare and contrast, and kind of identify like what I deemed to be important to us in our trades because our time frames are so different. So we'll talk about that. But you want to jump into your trade that you wanted to discuss from last week?
Yeah, definitely. So I traded two things this week. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about. I started a funded futures account with a company called UProfit. Um, it's just a company whose rules I really liked. The one I chose. There's a plethora of companies doing things like these where you trade, you follow the rules, you hit their profit targets, and they fund you with X amount of account that you're paying for. um, I think it's a good opportunity. I'm a very risk adverse person. I like to just stack my winners. I don't mind taking my time with it to get to that profit target and then get the funded account. I just think it's a really good opportunity for me to expose myself to big size, and to I honestly build. I just think overall it's a really good opportunity. So I opened that up this week, and the day I opened it up, the next day something set up on futures, and that's honestly what I want to talk about. Um, I just switched my screen over. So wheat. I traded wheat futures. Wheat futures was setting up really nicely on the daily. It did break out on futures. It had that nice 13 or 1138 key level there. Just a wick action, wick action, wick action. It also had a 2 hour supply zone. Like coming all the way back from I think March. That's actually one of my favorite trading styles. Whenever there's a key level at the top of a supply zone, because if I see big volume pushing right through that, I know it's 9 times out of 10 it's going to be broken. It's going to be a beautiful clean break through it. I had a
Mhm.
4 hour supply zone about 15 points above. Um, like I said, I'm a risk adverse person. The wheat futures, they don't trade micros, they trade minis. So my stop had to be tight, like right off the bat. Because if I even took a 10 point stop on this, I'd already be down like $500. So it's kind of how I wanna I went about it. I did know I wanted to participate in this trade,
Mhm.
so I exposed myself as like I had a little bit of like a system issue, which kind of got me in late, but I wasn't it wasn't after the breakout. I was still in right before it broke my key level. So thankful for that. This is the daily. I'm gonna switch here to the 5 minute chart. Now this is something I'm not used to. This is something that my one of the groups that I'm in, they talk about a lot. Futures have had really like future commodity futures have had really clean breakouts, and by clean breakouts I mean just like the things that I was experiencing back in October, in September, in the equities market, but it almost transitioned into futures. And by super clean I mean big volume through key level, breaks cleanly, continues, comes back, retests, tightens up right above the key level, doesn't ever come back in, and then some volume picks it up, and it just continues like through the breakout. This is not something I'm used to seeing the past 6 months. Key levels have been faded in the equities market almost instantaneously. I've become a scalper in that sense. I will fade the key level breaks very, very fast. That's how I've gotten a lot of my winners. I don't hold them. So it's
Mhm.
been super. This was super nice to see, to be involved in too. For my first trade of this funded account challenge, and it netted me a nice return, a nice start to my profit. My just like my profit basis here. But you can see the huge volume right at this candle. Some report came out. I wasn't aware of this report until about half hour before it came out. Thankfully, somebody in my other group let me know that this report was coming out. So this was a huge like that. I like was immediately aware that this could bring in some volatility, and I kind of prepared myself to potentially take a position. Like I said, I had some issues with the broker, so I was a little bit late into the entry. But I took it at about, I think it was like 11:36, was my entry, 11:36 or 11:37, and I sold it right into that 4-hour supply. You can see a double tap. It faded, but it never faded into in beneath my key level. It actually volume died down heavily after that big volume break. Tightened up, took off, and I mean, I think this thing went another 30 or 40 points above.
Mhm.
So very clean break. Was very nice to see. It was very nice for me to be involved as well, and just like get some margin on there. You know what I'm saying? Like get some profit and really start the funded account challenge on the right foot. So overall it was interesting. I've never traded futures before. I do trade SPY and QQQ off futures charts, so I know how they trade. And that was kind of that. I think on Friday the only thing I traded on my other account this week was Roblox. It's had high volume for a couple days. I think this thing had a low. Yes, it hit a low of 20. That's crazy because we were trading this in the 140s or whatever.
Mhm.
They hit a low of 20 a couple days ago, and huge volume, double, triple the average. So it was on my radar. When I kind of nailed into the smaller time frames, 2990 was a key area that I was watching. And on when the market opened, came down, tapped it, took off for like a 2 point run in the first 5 minutes, but then got faded and then came back in. I actually took a position in the third 5 minute candle as it was reclaiming VWAP, and I sold into this extension move for like a 2 point run.
Mm.
So it was a nice little trade. Obviously my account's looking it's looking solid. I'm feeling pretty good about my position where I'm at this year, where I'm at this point, how I'm
Mhm.
feeling, and how I'm gonna continue tackling the market. A lot of the fact that I've been profitable, even on a small account, whatever, doesn't matter to me. Just the fact that I've been
Nope.
profitable,
Yep.
the fact that I've followed my rules, I've followed my plays, I've kind of followed my heart here. You know what I'm saying? Like that to me is super important because it shows to me the proof that I can continuously do this. And
Mhm.
there's gonna be always things to tweak, and I'm gonna
Yep.
continue to tweak it. I'm gonna continue to really push the gas when I start figuring out the adjustments and the details.
How long you been trading for again? When did you start?
It's gonna be a year next month, actually.
In June? That's what
Hmm.
I thought, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna
I think
be.
it goes to show too, like you came in because I remember it all started with a Facebook Messenger message to me back in June, and you've come in a year so far so fast. But I think it goes to show if you find somebody who can give you correct information, how that speeds up. And if you actually lean into it like you've done, you've done everything right and you've put in the work and you studied the right things and you started off with good habits and you executed and you changed things quickly because you were having issues a couple months into your trading, and I was like, oh, just adjust your risk to reward. Look at Minervini, like reread because you read the book when
Yeah.
and then you went back and you looked at it again, it made sense, you implemented it, and then like, you know what I mean? It just stacks.
Yeah.
And then you found a time frame, you found setups, and then then we both started learning and going into that, and you delve into your setups even more, and just like so, I think like for just a piggyback like what you're saying and to like your success right now to document this for other people who may not be like not that we're six figure traders or whatever, but I feel like we have really good grasp on the process. So if you're newer, and just for us to document this in time, like to acknowledge what gave you the success that you have right now is like implementing the right things, focusing on your risk, focusing on a setup that makes sense to you, and then just leaning into that even more, like narrowing your focus down on those things and doing it more. And that's clearly shown your success because the market's been getting slammed. Even though you trade on a smaller time frame, you've still been able to execute in this market environment. And we all know in a bull market, things are way more forgiving. So you can only imagine, your performance is probably going to be magnified, and you're getting better too right now.
Yeah.
So it's like that's super important to state like what those factors that led up to that is,
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
and it hasn't even been a year.
Yeah.
So, you just keep on that path and, it makes sense. Like if you see why the success is there.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said,
Just wanted to
proud of
state
it.
that. Yeah, just wanted to state like those factors that, from my point of view that I've seen that have led to your success because I think it's really important to understand like how quickly and how far you've come, and
Yeah.
because everybody wants to get better, faster, whatever, but, you know, um, that's it. Focus, narrow your focus, find good information, implement it as fast as you can. That's what I've seen Juan do. Like, when he comes across a problem, we've talked about it, and he's found solutions. And he's not just like, oh, I need to do this. Like, how many people say that? But like, I see you actually do it,
Yeah.
and that's important. Like, so, anyways, sorry. Uh, yeah, I was gonna talk about wheat too, and just like this kind of blends into the topic, of like knowing the variables, like you talking about the key level break or whatever. For me, I'm looking for bigger consolidations too. So my variables, from what I was seeing from wheat was the consolidation on the larger time frame. I didn't even know about the report either, because you told me about it. But I had already been stopped out. I entered on this bit of aggressive consolidation here. Um, and I entered off a pullback around here. It flushed me out. We had a down day in the market. I don't know. I don't watch the indexes, but I noticed a lot of stocks were down that day. But we kind of recovered and had an inside range day. And then I was able to adjust my range from that lower high and said, okay, we have a little bit more of a less aggressive range here formed. I have a big down day, which I don't like on above average volume, but gave it the benefit of the doubt because everything got smoked that day, I think, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then it recovered, had an inside day, and then the next day I bought it again, coming out of the range, uh, and that was before the report, because the report dropped on May 12th.
Hmm.
But irregardless, I think the setup, my setup, the consolidation of an aggressive uptrend kind of tells the tale, right? No one's selling really, price is consolidating. So there's probably there's a reason that sellers aren't hitting it. Not the report could have been bad. I don't even know what the report was. All I know is came out, volatility picked up in volume, and then it broke out of its larger weekly range.
Yeah.
So that's like the key behind my setup. From a technical level, I don't really have to know, like it's important with like biotechs or something like that, where it's an all or nothing type of deal because they're not,
Yeah.
fundamentally good companies, and there could be a report could come out and to think a gap down 50%. That's huge risk, right? So, but generally, other things you can kind of, you can be a technical trader and manage your risk pretty well without much risk. But anyways, so took that breakout, but it was just interesting to see like the way I played it. Like I had already tried it twice on a larger time frame, and one strictly just played the breakout when that report was coming because he was made aware of a potential catalyst because you were looking at it the night before. And it's
Correct.
so funny that confirms why these patterns work. Like you're like, oh my god, this thing looks ready to break out on futures. I'm over here, I'm trying it on the ETF because I'm like, oh, roll the dice on the first one, like, oh, okay, kind of, market had a down day.
Yeah.
And then it reset up and got tighter, and you're like, oh, I really like this on futures. And then the next morning, you're like, oh, yeah, there's a report coming out. Like, the volume's dead. No shit. Like,
Yeah.
and then you saw like, the key there is, I think, even though we both executed on different time frames, the variables, like, what are the variables with that? It's like, you like to see volume. You
Mhm.
like to see it specifically through a key level where it's just cuts right through supply because those are the characteristics of a winning trade for you.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for me with breakouts. Although for me, the volume is not necessarily as big of a deal because I know the setup is more of where I put the variable for the trend that I'm trying to capture. But for you specifically with your time frame, you need that momentum because that's your move. You're
Yeah.
trying to capture that. So it's like if it's not there, you don't have time to sit there and take a trade if it's not going to be if it's not going to be a momentum mover right then and there because that's you're like trying to capture a huge breakout move in an hour or whatever, get your main piece off of it. So I think that's really that just goes into the variables of that, which we're going to discuss after this. But another one, so I'm still sitting in wheat anyways. Like I said, I tried it twice. I got it on the second one, and then we got some continuation on the break, which is pretty nice. We'll see what happens on Monday tomorrow.
Oh, and then we get that news coming out of India over the weekend too.
Yeah, and we'll see if that matters too. Like we'll see how the market reacts. It's just it just goes to show if you study the patterns and
It's I think it's crazy that like and we've spoken about it over and over before too, between you and I mostly, how like price precedes news. And how like, you're getting the breakout and then you get this report, right? And then you
Mhm,
potentially get a gap up and go tomorrow, right?
mhm,
Because India's stopped all exportation of wheat and they're the second or
mhm,
third largest country of wheat exportation. Right behind, I think the US is one, but then right after them is like Russia and Ukraine, who are currently involved in a war, and farmers are definitely not out farming, right?
right.
In Russia and Ukraine. So like, then you get the third largest country is like, okay, we're gonna ban all exports of wheat because we need to preserve it for our population, right? And then it's like, oh my God, like what does scarcity of a product do for the product price, right? It's gonna shoot the
Yep.
product price up. And then it's like, oh my God, like all these things aligned, and then everybody who wasn't in wheat, it's like hindsight. Then they look in hindsight, they're like, oh yeah, you had the report, and then you had that ban. Yeah, of course we should have been in wheat after wheat's doubled or tripled or whatever it does in the next
Right.
couple weeks, right? Um, but then like you can see this price precedes news, just always.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think too, like if you want to take your trading to the next level, like understanding fundamental variables, because that's going to help you. Here's the thing, and I've heard multiple people say this. It's like if you're a big player with tons of money, right, and you're probably your fund or whatever, they're gonna sell most likely when the price reaches what they think it's worth or if it's too extended on a technical level or something like that. But generally I feel like if I was a seller who had information that wasn't readily available or knowing from the public just from like analysis because these guys have tons of analysts who just their sole job is to study whatever the product whatever the stock is, determine what its rough value is, and they buy huge amounts. But if the price reaches that level to what they think it's worth, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to sell at that level. They're going to sell when whatever piece of news or catalyst, when the price reaches that and it's priced in, that's where they're going to start selling at to secure their profits. Because from that point, by the time the news hits, prices are it's already made it to that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? That's why retail is always the general guy who hears something by the time it hits the street is too late because there's smart money is always going to be earlier than you.
yeah,
And so even if price it does precede news, but it doesn't always mean it will play out to whatever the event is too. But you're right, you're exactly right. If you add in the fundamental factors and you get good at it, as in you're becoming like your own hedge fund, like in a sense of like I can look at whatever this setup is, right? Anybody can look at a flag. Anybody can look at a bull flag on
yeah,
anything.
yep,
But if you have the ability to say what are the fundamental factors, that's where you start taking trading to another level, especially if you're a trend follower, because you're going to need the conviction to be able to hold for multiple days and weeks, especially if you're trying to hold a large position size for the bulk of the move, right? Like
Yep.
I don't need to bottom and top tick, but like if it pops out, and like Juan was saying, like if you get like a retest of a level or something like that, like if you don't have the conviction to know that there's underlying fundamental factors that could potentially make something double, you're not going to have the conviction to hold your full size for a good move.
Yep.
So that's what I've really been trying to focus on, just putting more notes on my chart. Not getting caught up in the reasons, because in wheat, I'm just like, wheat's flagging. Like I did my own little bit of research before we heard of, saw the report or whatever, and I was like, oh well, yeah, it makes sense. Like Ukraine, Russia, da da da. So that, but this was like one of the only good setups that was holding up in this crappy, while everything else is getting smoked in the market. So that tells me right there, no one's selling it. It's basic supply and demand. There's underlying fundamental factor that gave me the conviction to take a little bit more size and try and hold for a bigger move. And then you get even more news in the favor of the direction. So I really think that's a way you can take your trading to like the next level, is focusing on the fundamental
Oh yeah.
factors. Um, Another trade I had real quick was MP. I was wanting to short this bad boy. Just from a weekly, we had a weekly trend line from about May of last year. So about a year, this trend line's been holding up on the weekly, roughly where the 50 SMA is. We had a breakdown of it, a little bit of a bear flag here on the daily, where it was kind of ranging on this long-term trend line, and sellers were kind of hitting it. We also have the 200 SMA on the daily. So we had gone through well, let's see, about two consolidations here within the range of a bit of a bear flaggish descending triangle. We had a bit of a rally attempt here, couldn't even get up to the 200 SMA, and then I was just really sensing weakness on this thing. I was like, okay, we've had a consolidation in this range. We're gapping up. There's actually a key level on the weekly there. I don't have it. I had it in Thinkorswim, but not in my TC 2000. It's right around this area here, about 40.39. So we had a key level there that I was really looking at to work off of, and price was just gapping up right into that key level. I saw it push up, from the open, pushed up above that 39. As soon as I saw it reverse through the key level, I'm like, I'm in. I'm in. I covered half right here at the bottom of the range, just because you never know. You never know if the range is going to hold. The trend line held for several, one, two, three. That would have been the fourth time on the weekly. So I'm like, hey, good to cover half here. I added some on this 15-minute candle right here. I added some back, actually a large amount back. Uh, it tried to recover, and then I gave it the next candle. Next candle broke, and then this candle right here. This candle really messed me up. That candle right there. So we have a strong close on the 15, and then it came down, and it was literally like it was fighting right here for like the longest time. And I covered the rest of my position right here because it was hammering. And I was like, I could easily see this breaking. And I didn't, because I added here, my average was about right in there. And I had some decent profit, smaller profit, but I'm like, if this hammers and we get a bounce to retest the trend line, I don't want this to come all the way back to my entry, because I had decent profits. That's why I covered there. And as soon as I covered, literally the bottom fell out. And then this is an obvious extension. Biggest volume of the day, closed at the bottom. And then you can see here, it just, the sellers were done for the rest of the day. And then you get a bit of a squeeze into close. Let's see if we can see that day right there. Yeah, you get a squeeze into close, and that day closed about here. And then you even see the retest the next day of the trend line before
Yep.
you flush further. I don't even care about this. In a bear market environment, I'm not trying to, unless it's like really capitulation, but we had multiple days of selling.
Yep.
These are all variables here. So if you're listening to this, really listen to the nuance of all this, because this is like, I'm not tooting my own horn here, but like even hearing myself talk and break down trades now, I'm on such another level than I was before as a new trader. I'd be trying to short like over here or some crap, being like, oh, why did I get stopped? So there's just so many variables, but that was a really good trade for me. I like using these ranges to go on the short side as well, not only for breakouts, because this could have went the other way too. If the market got a big, if we had a big bear rally and this broke out, this could have easily went the other way. But I'd rather short from a top of a level, moving averages, range. There's so much resistance there, and if the day's timed right, you get a big move like this. So it was a 5-point move or something like that.
which is amazing on a $40 stock. Like,
Yeah,
jeez.
and the way and like just the execution there, I loved like not playing it a little safe, covering at a support just to be safe. Added
Yeah,
on the break, and then my execution was just literally. I tell you, as soon as I covered, I was like, man, this is hammering. I was like, I don't want it to bounce because I know it's probably going to retest the range. I was like, I'd rather just take it off here because it was fighting. And as soon as I took it off, literally the tape just flushed red, and this thing just like it's crazy, right? I mean, I
yeah.
covered 36 and literally like 5-10 minutes later it gave up a buck 50, $2. Like, I don't know, just I'll do it better next time, like.
All you can
But
do. That's all you can
yeah,
do.
but that was a fun one. That was a good trade. That was fun.
Yeah, it
And
seems like
I'm
it was a really good trade.
Yeah, and I like having a focused short setup too because I want to be able to trade as a swing trader. I love nothing more than breakouts. Like, I just want to stock trades. I want to buy them on a breakout and I want to hold them for as long as they can go and give me as much as they can, and do that over and over. But I understand I can also use my setup, on the opposite side to give me just as good risk to reward, and like, just pad the stats. Even if I'm not trying to hold a short, all the way to zero.
Yep.
I can get some padding trades to kind of help me through the bad times when breakouts aren't working. So
Yeah,
take
definitely.
take the breakdowns. Um, but yeah, you want to jump into the topic now? Like, we kind of talked about it through our trade reviews, but like.
Yeah, so kind of topic for us was the whole trading variable situation. Kind of what I mentioned at the beginning. For every trader, for every trading style, there's going to be different variables. For me specifically, I love my key level breakouts. It's my most profitable setup. It's the cleanest moves I've seen. Um, and I execute on a 5 minute chart. I mean, there's just my confirmations are
Mhm.
I execute on the 5.
Okay.
I enter. Typically I enter like right at or right under the key level or right above,
Mhm.
depending on if I'm going short or long. I don't enter past it because I'm gonna keep my wrist tight.
Mhm.
So if I'm gonna see an immediate rejection of that level, then I'm just gonna exit out almost
So
instantaneously.
let's do a questioning thing here too,
Sure,
so we can get some substance out of this. So you're talking about your time frame. Okay,
sure,
so what matters to you? So if you're executing off of 515, that's kind of what you're looking for, a big move on that time frame.
correct.
Your level is something that's going to dictate whether you have a good risk to reward trade, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So that would be a variable. So say something was too far, too wide from under your key level. What would you like? What are some variables you're looking for with that key level to determine if it's a good risk to reward for you? Like, what would that have to look like, or what are you looking for?
So if it went like too far too fast, like, and it's still under my key level, but I see constructive volume, and I need to
Hmm.
see some sort of consolidation.
Okay.
We had a trade, a short, just right before these couple weeks flush, and I remember I spoke to you about it in real time. It was Tesla at a key
Hmm.
level, Tesla breakdown at a key
Hmm.
level. And once it broke down through that key level, it absolutely got destroyed. It just
Hmm.
obliterated. I think that was the day it went from like 970 or 950 down to the 800s.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and then I told you I had my finger on the buy button. I had the contract pulled up. I was ready for it. Like, it was like I was in. You know what I'm saying? Like, all I had
Hmm.
left to do was just click the mouse. Click, like, just
Hmm.
one click the mouse. And you asked me why. And we kind of spoke about it a little bit. I'm like, dude, I mean, it opened up almost at 1,000. Like, right, it opened up, went to 1,000, and then came down 25 points in like one and a half candles, one and a half 5 minute
Hmm.
candles, right? For me, there was no consolidation, right? I could see,
Hmm.
I've seen, far and wide, a lot of things go into a key level that hard and bounce.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
like, typically when it goes into a key level, it like that fast, it bounces.
Hmm.
Um, Bounces, like, it uses it as either a floor or a ceiling, whatever you want to call
Right.
it.
Right.
And so there was no if there was a consolidation, some sort of flag, some type of rallying on low volume, like something I could get short off of, targeting a
Mhm.
break of that key level, then I would have taken a position. But we spoke about it. I'm like, dude, I can't.
I remember.
I just couldn't. I just couldn't. There was no place for me to. Where was I gonna set my risk at? You know what I'm saying? At a
Mhm.
thousand, at like 25
Mhm.
point drop, like on a contract, that's gonna absolutely annihilate my contract. Like that's just not gonna
Mhm.
happen. There was no place for me to go short. So that's what I'm looking for. If it's going right, if my key level's way high, like way higher, way lower than where price is trading at, and it goes very hard, very fast, I'm gonna wait for some sort of consolidation, some price action, like some tightening up,
Mhm.
some place I know that there might
Measure
be.
risk.
Yeah, I can measure risk, and there's some sort of accumulation by the market, just to
Mhm.
like take it either way, right? And if it
I
breaks,
remember we talked about that too because
yeah,
I pushed you. I said, if you flip the chart upside down, those are the exact variables you like to see on a breakout,
correct,
and then you could use a mathematical stop.
yeah, yeah,
But you knew, but that's the key, I think, in growth right there. Because I remember that specific conversation because it kind of like you're like, oh yeah, it's the same stuff. It's just upside down. But it's so that I think that's so important is like because once you pick up on these new things, it provides new opportunity. Because
yeah,
like now I would ask you is like with those variables that you identified, you like consolidations, but if you had an inkling of a setup where you think like just like MP where you feel like you're sensing the weakness and you're going to get a flush day
yeah.
and you were already thinking that, would you execute the trade even if you didn't have a consolidation like that
Yeah,
now?
yeah, 100%. I mean,
But you
that's almost
mm,
exactly what happened with ZW, like
mhm,
with wheat futures, right? Like
mhm,
that. I mean, the price action got a little bit loose and wide because of that report
yeah,
coming out. It got very
yeah,
volatile, but I mean, I was thinking, and I thought to myself, I'm like, I take this trade 10 out of 10 times. There's no
yeah,
question about it. I mean, it's a clear line in the sand on a
mhm,
daily and weekly chart,
yep,
right? Mixed in with some zones. I had a specific target.
mhm,
I'm like, dude, I take this trade 10 out of 10 times. Like, there's no question.
yeah.
I'm like, I want to be in this trade. I know there's no micros to trade on futures. That's why I'm like, okay, minis, I have to keep a tight stop. So I just know it's gonna have to be mathematical if it's gonna fade back in.
That's what I
Yeah.
was trying to get at there. With that type of trade, that's what you know, though. You know, when I don't have a consolidation where I can say, oh, here's where I'm wrong, because you have a straight candle, right?
Yep.
Just like a meaty candle. And it's like there's no tightening,
Yeah.
but also on the flip side of that, when you have your level, now you say, okay, when I get this break, I take it here, but I choose how much I'm risking
Right.
mathematically, right? So that's how you operate now on those,
Yeah.
short or long?
I'm gonna
Okay.
have to. I'm gonna like, and that's just, and I've
Did you
done
do that
it.
on wheat? Did
And
you do that on wheat, or did
yes,
you have a
I did.
it was a straight break?
Yeah, it was a straight break. 20, I think
Okay.
it went from 22 to 38.
And
So
how much did you
it was like a
risk?
9. It was a 9. If it had to, what was it, like a 16-point candle, and I was risking half of that candle. I knew if that candle faded back in more than halfway, it was not gonna,
Okay.
it was not
So
gonna.
you knew roughly what your dollar
Yeah, yeah.
or okay.
Correct. Yeah.
But
And
that's how you have to do it,
yeah,
yeah.
and now on a now on futures, I can operate more on a risk to reward basis versus like a
Right.
mathematical basis. Um and by mathematical, I'm talking about not just price, right? I'm talking about risk to reward, because I know futures trade per tick, per
Right.
dollar, and they trade like there's no expiration. I don't have to deal with delta, I don't have to deal with theta, whatever it is that I have to deal
Right.
with on options contracts. So that's kind of how I'm going to be tackling this challenge. Like, oh, how much was your winner on that? 3R. How much was you losing?
Right.
1R. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
there's no if, ands, or buts.
And that's just measured just so everybody knows he's measuring that off of per trade because your 1R is not going to be straight 1R every time, right?
Correct. Yeah, no,
It's going
it's
to be
not.
based on either if you have a consolidation and that risk looks good, like
Yep.
your 1R for one trade could be 2 points or it could be 5 points for another. Yeah.
Yep.
But I would imagine there would be some dollar risk where you're like, I just can't do that
Correct.
much
Yep.
state.
And
Yeah.
I know that right off the back of my hand. So like,
Yep.
if I know the risk to reward is like, if the risk is too high for that trade, I just won't be participating in that trade.
Right. And if you're an intraday trader, this is so important because me as a swing trader, you know me, like I do all my scans, I go through the stocks and I look and I'm like, okay, this, like I'm looking for tightness and I'm like, I may have a setup, but if the volatility is too wide and I can't say, okay, here's where I want to go for this, like you as an intraday trader, if you don't have this stuff ironed out, like I can sit there, run my little calculator and like look and like really strategize and look at it. And because I'm, the market's closed, I'm sitting there, look, I'm making my plan. But as an intraday trader, you got to be within minutes and seconds. You got to have all this down. What am I willing to risk? What is too wide? What is constructive? What's small and good risk to reward? And you're calculating this in the moment a lot of
Yep.
times. But you typically, one, I know you typically are a I know you do trade intraday too, but you're already planning out your levels ahead of time. You already have a general plan, and then you're just kind of letting price action confirm and providing you a good opportunity, or it may hit your levels and it may not look right or act right, and you still won't buy it. So I think that's understanding those variables, right, for
Yeah,
newer
definitely,
traders too.
definitely, always.
Let's go into selling then. For selling, what are some variables that I know you're quicker, so I can kind of chime in too, just to get a little bit of a perspective from a longer time frame for you. Once
Hmm.
you get your setups, whether it's a breakout or breakdown, what are you kind of looking for to sell or to get out? I know you have scaling techniques, but for that initial one, for you right now in your trading career and where you're at, what is the trigger to sell that first portion?
For my contracts, I was typically looking for average or above average gain. Honestly,
Okay.
just let me protect my position and
Mhm.
leave the runner on, right?
Mhm.
Um, that's what I'm gonna be doing for tackling this futures account as well. And I did start sizing up here with contracts. But now it depends on where my levels are. For example, for ZW breakout, I had that 4 hour supply 15 points above. I knew it was there. I knew it was gonna act up. And it did. It did act up. It hit
Mhm.
that level and came right back to my key level. Right, it held a key level. It's
Mhm.
constructive breakout. Held the key level and then took off.
Mhm.
But I had one lot on for ZW. I couldn't.
Mhm.
I can't let this thing go 15 points and come back in all the way to my
Mhm.
entry. You know what I'm saying? It's just that's not. It's not a feasible way to trade.
Can we just delve into that a little bit more too? Because I know we've grown through this. So the one lot issue, like when you're a smaller trader,
Sure.
is you get that anxiety of like having just a small position or just one,
Mm-hmm.
whether your options or futures contract. I've been there too with size, with iTrade shares, is like when you have that small position, it's like, I don't, you get into that. It could or it could not, like
Yep.
if you're trading one or small size, you're at a multiple of your risk and you're new, I think the best thing you can do is if you're 2R and above and you don't know, just take your profit.
Yeah.
Because at that point you're gambling, right? If you're
Yeah.
not moving the stop up or back, like that's very important. And you've learned that. We both learned that together, I think, too, because
Yeah.
you've helped me with my selling issues. Um, and so I think that's really important because you can learn. If it goes higher, you can study that and say, "Oh, look here, it held," or whatever like that. But so for you, for your one lot, whether you have multiple lots or not, you're taking it off at a target typically or a multiple of your risk, right?
So yeah, correct. Target or
Okay.
multiple, whatever comes first.
Okay.
Well, it's not one way or another. I'm not here to get greedy. It's how I've grown my account in this market. You know what I'm saying? It's a small
Yeah.
account. I've typically done one contract, and
Consistently too.
I'm letting this go at multiples of my risk or at these targets, and it's worked really well for me. I've had obviously I could have probably grown my account way a lot more had I
Mhm.
held some of them, but I don't know which some of them is gonna run.
That
You
is
know what
the
I'm saying?
key. That is the key. You don't know which ones are going to go higher and you don't know which ones are going to hit the target and just come all the way back fast.
Yeah.
So
So
when you're at that moment of a target, or I mean, generally you shouldn't be taking a trade if it's not 2 to 1 anyways.
yeah,
If you can't get two, if your risk has to be, 1 point, just whatever, a quick example, $50, something like that, whatever the points you're risking, if you can't, if you don't think it can move double of that, it's probably not a good trade to begin with.
yeah.
But when it does get above double whatever you risked, whether you have a target up there or whatever, I would say, I mean, you can tell me what you think, but I would rather almost protect the 2R, um, or
Oh,
not take the trade. Like say if the target, if my risk is too big versus like if a target is below where that 2R is, you know what I'm
yeah.
saying? like that's probably not a good risk to reward because you don't want to
No,
risk
you
more
never.
than where it's probably going to reject, right?
No, absolutely not, and that's not something I'm gonna expose myself to. Like I know how it is I trade now. I know what it is I'm comfortable with, and I know
And what you're
like
looking for. Yeah.
exactly, and I know exactly what I know what it is I'm looking for. So like if I'm not 100% sure this is gonna hit, or this has room to move. There's no key
Hmm.
levels. There's no supply zones,
Hmm.
that's gonna stop it. There's no something there that might stop it. Um, and I'm not always looking for it to hit the like we said, I'm not always looking for it to hit the target. I got an
Hmm.
extension like I took Roblox and I probably could have left another contract on to run a little longer, but I got busy with work. I was in meetings. I looked up and I saw my computer. I was at, I think I was like 25 or 30%. I was at a multiple of my risk. Um,
Easy.
and I was like, There's no question about I got another meeting coming up. Let me sell it real quick and call it for the day." And I did that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I
Or
did.
just backstop it
Yeah.
and let it go. Like if you're comfortable with like risking, 5-10% on and you already over, your 2 hours 20,
Yeah.
but those are I think I'm just right here. I'm trying to pull out stuff that like for newer people that won't know and stuff that we've learned to help show.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because we've had to learn all this on our own, you and me going back and forth, looking at each other's
Yep.
mistakes, like, well, how can we get better? How can we do this? And that's one thing I think is the biggest is don't allow greed to if you're at a multiple of what you're risking, that is a good trade and you should not let that trade whether it explodes and goes to infinity. I don't care because it's not about getting that one home run. That is
Correct.
not what trading is about. It's about getting a multiple of your risk over as many trades as possible. And once you understand that, like, it's harder for newer traders because you think you work so hard to get in a good trade and then when you get a good trade, you're like, "Oh my god, like I need to get as much." It's not
No, it's not
no,
about yeah, no, don't.
you just gotta get a multiple of your risk. If whether it's at least above two, you always want to do 2 to 1. But like
Yep.
if you're at 3, 4, 5, like do and you don't know because you don't have enough of experience, like if you have, size, take half off, backstop the two, and like that trade will play out, and then you will be able to learn and study, and that's how you get better.
Yeah.
But don't never let a winner turn into a loser or even break even. You know what I mean? Like take some off the table if you're at a multiple. Backstop your multiple. You have these options. And that's going to give you confidence. And then, oh, by the way, you can go back, look at that trade and say, how could I have done it better? And then you're going to do it better next time and you're
Yeah.
going to get more wins. So I think that's really important for people because when you're newer, you just get this thing. I mean, at least for us, I know we had this anxiety of like, where how do I know when to sell? Do I sell here or
Yeah.
do I sell there? It's like, so what are there any other variables you can think of? We talked about what we like to look for in a setup. You kind of discussed what you like to look for selling. Um, I
No,
just really want to
yeah.
press you because you've come so far in such a little time, and I think a lot of people are into intraday trading too.
That it's funny. This isn't. I don't think this is how you should trade. I just think I enjoy this style because I see how fast it can net me profits. Right, if I nail a
Mhm.
trade, I'm an intraday trader. Right, 5, 10, 15 minute time frame. If I click the buy button and I see I'm up 50% on a position, like almost instantaneously. I think 9 times out of 10, like I'm if I have 2 or 3 contracts on, I'll get rid of the majority of my position and leave 1 runner on. Or if I have 1 contract on, I will literally just like
Take it
I will take it. What like
or move the stop
or
up
move
close
this
to kind
or
of choke it.
really choke it off though.
Yeah,
Because I'm
yeah.
not gonna like if I'm up in 5 or 10 minutes, 50% of my position, like, how much can you add? Like, if my P&L is moving that fast, I'm not gonna give that money's in my account. I'm not giving that back. I'm not giving back
Mhm.
anybody money that's in my account. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm letting
yeah.
the market pay me. And like, maybe that's not how you should always specifically trade because that 50% could turn into 150 or 200. But again, like, how much work did I just put in to get 50% in 5 and 10 minutes? Like, I'm just not gonna give that back. If
Yeah.
if I'm gonna call it a day there, I'm gonna call it a day there, and like I'll check later on to see maybe if I could have held there for longer, if there was maybe other key levels that I potentially missed. I'm just not gonna give that back. Like, if my PNL is
Mhm.
moving that violently and that fast in my direction, I'm gonna sell it. Like, Like,
Yeah.
I'm just even against my direction. I mean, I shouldn't have to get into a position and be immediately down 30, 40%. Like, I that's why I have a stop loss in place.
And
But
I think that confidence comes with more experience too. If you understand that, like, as a newer trader, like I was saying too, like I remember like grasping on it would take me so long to find a setup and stock it and get it. And like, especially for me as a swing trader, it was like, it's even harder.
yeah,
So when the past year or two, like the breakouts have either failed or they've been kind of crappy for the ones that I found. So that's what I was having an issue was I do all this work and like I get, at least a 2R sometimes, decent ones. And I just would not take it because I'm like, I'm a swing trader. I need to be getting the trend and I need to be taking like, good winners out of that. So I completely understand as a newer trader, it's like you feel like you do all this work and when you get that one winner, you're just like this thing needs to go to the moon. This is what I've been working for, but like
yep,
you don't understand like once you get good enough, you build experience and confidence and you're able to put yourself in those type of trades more and more. So it becomes less of like I need as much as I can out of one trade to as like you kind of start grasping like what's average and what's above average and you want to protect those more because you're going to get into more of those trades, so it becomes less stressful about one trade and more so about having a good process to net you good profits. And then when you get the monster, kind of what to look for and what to expect to execute and get more of it.
yep,
And that's so important. It's like that will come with time and from studying and reviewing. But in the moment to help build your confidence, if you're a multiple of 2R of what you're risking, like protect that. And if you see something go higher quicker, protect that. don't
yep,
don't feel guilty about am I selling too early here, or like let the process of reviewing after you're out of the trade teach you, and you'll get better for the next one and
yep.
you'll know what to look for. And so I think that's where the experience comes from, is like studying, learning the variables, because when you know what to look for and you know what to expect, that's what helps build the execution experience. You think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'd like you said, I'd rather go back and review my trade and be like, "Oh, it went up a little bit more." You know what I'm saying? I then go back and review my trade and say, "Oh my god, I was up 50% and it came back in and I sold it for a 10% loss." Like,
Ah, yeah.
how frustrating is like I don't want to
And
give that back.
and some people, and like I know you and me both have been there and done that. You corrected quicker than me because I think your time frame was smaller. So for me, it took longer to kind of see that, but you really pushed me to be like, maybe you need to really look at, taking profits quicker or not being so greedy, because that was a big problem for me. And it's worse because I'm trying to work off a larger time frame. So, these breakouts go a little bit and I'm just like, eventually I say exactly what you said. I got tired of small winners let them turn into losers. At least I could have sold half of them at 2R, like instead of just being like, oh, I'm gonna give this one a chance to go higher. I'm gonna give this one a chance. Like, it's
Yeah.
only so many times you can do that. It's like, oh my god, this
You get
you
frustrated
know.
with all the paper cuts. Like you don't
Yeah,
yeah,
and it
don't.
just ruins your confidence,
Yeah.
and you're losing money, and it's like, well, dude, if I went back and looked at all the trades that went above 2R, if I would have just slammed those, if I just would have kicked them out, what would your return look like? And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, it doesn't feel as bad anymore. But, I don't think people have to go through that. Just like, secure those winners when you get them at a multiple and then go back and study and get better. And like that way you're building confidence, you're netting winners, and you're also using, the trades that played out to get better next time. You always will. If you go back and study in detail, you'll be like, oh, look at this pullback here. I don't need to be as scared when I see this pullback because it was just a pullback. And
Yeah.
here's what the volume looked like. Here's where, oh, there's a level here. It's gonna stack.
Yep.
So that's really good, man. I love talking about this. We like, again, these podcasts are just for documentation for us, but like I love having these conversations because this is how I feel like we've gotten so much better in our market knowledge and execution, is having these conversations. And I think it goes to show like a scalper can teach a swing trader, you can learn from other time frames. Like
Oh,
your
100%.
way your way, it doesn't have to be the right way. It's like when you open yourself up to different tactics or different points of view to really help bring just like vision to areas where you may have holes. That was one of my biggest holes, is I could not sell for a small, for a multiple of my risk. A 2R to me, to do all that work, I couldn't do it. But now I'm getting so much more defensively. It's helped me focus in on small flashes of weakness to be like, nope, taking half off here. Like I'm not letting this puppy come back in and wash me out for break even.
Yeah.
Taking half. Oh, look, it's going higher. I'm glad I sold half when it, could have reversed and turned into. And I still mess up. That first wheat trade, I had like 3R. I didn't sell half. It came in and actually took me out for a small loss. But I'm getting better at that. So
Yeah.
you've really helped me out in that aspect, and that's like helped my margins, especially in this environment, because I would just be bleeding to death if I wouldn't have adjusted. So
Yeah.
we can end it there, man. This is a bit of a longer one, but I think this is a really good episode. So
Yeah, this was a lot of information, especially just like because like variables are so important. Like you, and then you have to learn your own like your own.
yeah,
There's not gonna be a set thing that's gonna work for somebody else, even if they're trading the same setup that is gonna
yep,
work for you. Like it's just
yep,
not gonna happen. Go look at
yep.
every other swing trader, and I can guarantee you, Brandon is not gonna trade the same way that other swing traders are. Go look at every other scalper, and they're not gonna be. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not trading the same way I am, and that
Yeah,
everybody you should be okay with that. There can be 100 right ways to trade the market, but you got to focus on your own way, and you got to
I
make
love
that. You,
that.
you got
Yeah.
to make your own way, like the way that feels comfortable to you psychologically,
Mhm.
PNL wise, whatever feels just like whatever feels natural, whatever comes natural. You can't force it.
That's 100% right. And so many people don't understand that they want the one way to do it. And that's the thing is like the market, there's so many patterns. You just have to find what really fits your personality and your risk appetite. And that's how you box the market in. You literally say, I want to see XYZ. This is what I like. It works for me. I found that it works because I have data that proves that it works. And then you get better at that,
Yep.
and it may be little bits and pieces of different people and how they do things. And you just fit your strategy together. Like
Yeah.
no one person has the right way. Some people are able to copy other people and just get going and do it and it matches them right away. That's great, but I think people give up so early because they're not able to pull all the pieces to the puzzle and put their puzzle together.
Correct. Yep.
Everybody's puzzle is going to look different, but once you find it, I mean, it can change your life. The reward is unlimited if you really figure it out and you have a good strategy and you compound money. So
Gone.
it's a beautiful thing, man. Yep. And you just gotta everybody. It's gonna have a different journey, and it's gonna look different. But I think the key is don't give up, and we can close it out there.
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right. Yeah. So remember, manage your risk, guys. Stay focused. Be relentless. We'll see you next week.
Peace.